There is a photo of me on my driver's license that I do not recognize. Not in the dramatic way. Not amnesia. I remember going to the DMV. I remember the fluorescent lights and the woman who told me to stop smiling. I just mean the man in that photo is not the man currently holding the card. He has my name. He has my address. He wore my shirt that day. But something behind his eyes belongs to a stranger who used to rent this body and has since moved out without leaving a forwarding address. You felt this. Everyone has. You look at a photograph from 7 years ago and think, that person made decisions I would never make. Loved people I would never love. Laughed at things I no longer find funny. And yet by every legal and biological metric, that was you. That is still you.
Which is a strange thing to sit with, if you sit with it long enough. That identity is not a thing you have. It's a thing you keep replacing, quietly, like a ship's planks, until one morning you notice the whole vessel is new, and the original is in a landfill somewhere, and nobody filed a report. There's a fictional man who understands this better than most. His name is Wade Wilson, except it isn't, because he's been at least 6 different people with that name across at least 2 timelines, and in one of them, his mouth was sewn shut, and in another, he was a baby, and in another, he was a dog. A pug chihuahua mix, specifically, named Dogpool, named Mary Poppins. I am not making any of this up. Someone was paid to write it, and someone else was paid more to approve it. But here's the thing that itches when you scratch at it. The first version of Wade Wilson appeared on screen in 2009, and he was, by every meaningful account, wrong. The studio took a character whose entire identity is built around talking, a man nicknamed the Merc with a mouth, and they sewed his mouth shut. They gave him laser eyes and arm swords and teleportation, and they called him Weapon 11, and they removed the one thing that made him himself. Critics hated it. Fans hated it. Ryan Reynolds, the man wearing the face, almost certainly hated it, though he is too polite and too Canadian to say so directly. The whole thing was, in the most clinical sense, a misunderstanding of identity. They kept the body. They kept the name. They removed the soul and replaced it with a grab bag of borrowed powers and called it a finished product. I think about this more than I should, because I've watched people do this to themselves. Not with laser eyes, obviously, but you've seen someone come back from a bad year and they've changed everything. The hair, the job, the vocabulary, the posture, and something essential is missing. They've rebuilt the ship with better wood, but forgotten what the ship was for. They walk around wearing their own name like a costume that doesn't quite fit.
The universe, if it has a sense of humor, keeps it extremely dry. Because the way the correct version of Deadpool finally got made is itself a story about identity refusing to stay buried. Reynolds spent years, not months, years, lobbying for this film. He shot test footage of himself, in costume, in character, being the exact person the studios wouldn't let him be on camera. The studio said no, too weird, too violent, too R-rated, too much of a risk. Then someone leaked that footage onto the internet? Reynolds says he thought the director did it. The director thought Reynolds did it. It may have been someone at the studio who believed in the project enough to commit a small act of corporate sabotage. Nobody knows. Nobody will ever know. The point is that the real version of the character escaped into the world through an act of unauthorized honesty, which is exactly what the character himself would have done. There's an idea I keep circling. It doesn't have a clean name. It's the possibility that you can be the wrong version of yourself for years, decades even, and the right version is still in there, leaking out through cracks in the infrastructure.
The correct you doesn't need permission. It just needs a gap in the firewall. Wade Wilson, in the version that actually works, is a man who gets cancer. Terminal, late stage. He's just proposed to the woman he loves, and the universe responds with the biological equivalent of no. He volunteers for an experimental program that promises a cure and delivers one, technically. His cancer stops killing him. His healing factor means he can survive anything. But the trade is his face, his skin, the exterior the world uses to recognize him. He is cured and ruined in the same procedure, which is a metaphor so obvious I almost respect the universe for not even trying to hide the seams. He could go home. Vanessa, the woman he loves, would take him back. The film makes this clear. She would look past it. But he can't let her. Not because she wouldn't accept him, because he can't accept being seen. The disfigurement isn't the problem. The problem is that the outside now matches something he always suspected about the inside, and that confirmation is unbearable. I have a theory that most people are walking around with some version of this. Not the healing factor, not the cancer, just the quiet suspicion that if the world could see you the way you see yourself at 3 in the morning, the unedited, unlit version, they would not stay. And the cruelest trick is that this belief has almost nothing to do with whether it's true.
He names himself after a betting pool and a dive bar, the Deadpool, a game where people wager on who dies next. He takes the name of his own anticipated death and wears it as an identity, which is either the bravest thing a person can do or the most broken, and I have never been able to tell the difference. But here's where it gets genuinely strange. The character knows he's fictional. He looks at the camera. He talks to you. He signs autographs as Ryan Reynolds. He shoots his own past self in the head, literally travels through time and murders the version of himself that appeared in that terrible 2009 film. He also kills Ryan Reynolds before he can make Green Lantern, which suggests a level of self-awareness that borders on the theological. What do you do when you know your life is a story someone else is writing? Because the honest answer, the one nobody says out loud, is that you do exactly what he does. You make jokes. You talk constantly. You fill every silence with noise because silence is where the architecture shows through. And the architecture is that none of this was your idea. You didn't choose your face. You didn't choose your name. You didn't choose the timeline you were leaked into. Someone smuggled you into existence without a permission slip, and now you're here, trying to make it funny before it becomes unbearable.
The films tell us that every timeline has an anchor being, someone whose existence holds the whole reality together. When they die, everything slowly falls apart. The edges dissolve. The world just sort of forgets how to hold its shape. Obviously fictional. Obviously true. You know who your anchor beings are. You've maybe lost one. You notice the edges start to go soft. There are 100 versions of Wade Wilson now. A cowboy, a samurai, a zombie head someone puppeteers, a Welsh footballer, a baby. They roam a wasteland called the Void, which is where discarded timelines go to rot. 100 copies of the same man, and only one of them matters. Not because he's the strongest or the smartest, not because he has the best powers. He matters because he's the one who kept talking, the one they couldn't shut up. Every other version is a body with borrowed features. He's the mouth. That's the whole thing, really. Identity isn't what you're made of. It isn't your face or your powers or your timeline. It's what you refuse to stop saying, even when they literally sew your lips together and call you a weapon. The photo on my license expired last year. I need a new one. I'll go to the DMV again. I'll stand under those lights. The woman will tell me to stop smiling, and I will stop smiling. And the camera will take a picture of whoever I am now. He won't look like me either, but I think I'll let him have the card anyway. Come back next week if you want. I'll just be here, talking.